Hey everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. We are about stress. So if you're stressed out and you've got questions you'd like to ask, now's the time. Fire away in the chat or in the description below. And I'll do my best over the next hour or so to get those questions answered. Now, if you missed my crash course on stress, vitamins and minerals, super important. You go back and check that out for context. There's about an hour, 10 minutes or so of detailed information about the best nutrition for stress, the best supplements, which stacks work better for which types of stress. And we go do a pretty deep dive. So make sure you check that out. And as always, thanks for tuning in to Dr. Osborne Zone. Let's dive in. Let's see here. Hi, Dr. Osborne. I tried for the second time the creatine, but it gives me bloating. I don't know why. I even just took a little less than on the package. I bought the monocreatine, good quality. So I can't speak for which one you bought or which brands. Look, some brands are better than others. Some brands lie. Some brands, what they put on the package or the label isn't what they put on the package or label. Now, let's say you have a great brand and you're still bloating. It's very possible you are a low stomach acid producer. And we see that very frequently in people that don't tolerate creatine. So what you may consider doing is we have another product called Ultra Acid. And what it can help do is it can help you digest that better with potentially less gas, less bloating. So I might give that a try first and see if you tolerate it better. And again, that product is called Ultra Acid. Let's see, Melinda says, does prolonged fasting impact the body's ability to make creatine, or is it even an issue for intermittent fasting? Not so much intermittent fasting. Long-term fasting, I mean, if you're starving your body, yeah, it's going to impact you because creatine's made from it's made from amino acids. So if you're calorie malnourished, especially protein calorie malnourished for any great length of time, it will impact your body's ability to make or to continue to make creatine. That being said, if you're following kind of like a limited 3-day fast or 5-day fast, you're not doing it super frequently, I would be less worried by it. But if you're implementing long calorie restricted fasts multiple times a year, you're not getting enough protein, definitely would be concerning. Let's see here. Lois says, no grain, no pain, 14 months, fish, egg, fruit, veg, big improvements. 3 out of 4 alleles on the gluten genetic test. Can't find the intracellular test. It's at Gluten-Free Society, Lois. Let's see here. We'll have to put a link in for you. Sorry, I'm alone today, so I don't have I don't have my team working and doing all this stuff for me. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a link into the feed, and you can go there and you should be able to find it on this link. I can't direct it right at you, but just look at the comment section for that link to come from me. If you're looking to do INA testing, intracellular nutrient analysis testing, give me just a second here as I pull it up for you. Okay. There we go. That's coming your way now. On that same note, looks like action potential did get an INA test done. It was deficient in omega-3, omega-9, and vitamin K1. I mean, if those were the 3 you were low in, I mean, that's pretty simple. Ultra Omega, if you're using our products, Ultra Omega, 2 capsules a day. Ultra K directly, I would do 2 capsules a day. And then as far as omega-9 is concerned, generally you don't need a supplement for omega-9. One of the best ways to get omega-9 is through food. And so I would look to avocado oil, almonds are a good source. Olive oil is a fantastic source. So if you're not using those, consider those. And if maybe you're using a little bit of them, consider adding like an extra tablespoon of olive oil whether you do a salad or whether you do whatever kind of cooking you do, just add that extra tablespoon of that oil to it, and that should get you good quality omega-9. And if you want the video explanation on the INA test, just reach out to our customer support team at glutenology@gmail.com. You can reach out to Daniela or Elizabeth there, and they can get that information to you. Okay. Does the vitamin C flush take out the good bacteria? No. No. I mean, if you're doing them too frequently, can it affect your microbiome? Yes. If you do a vitamin C flush, a few times a year, are we worried about creating a diminishment of your gut flora? No. Remember, too much of a good thing can become a problem too. But as a general rule, no, vitamin C flushes do not wipe out your actual bacteria, your good flora. Vitamin D. Okay, so vitamin D, known as the sunshine vitamin, but what's the main difference between vitamin D and vitamin S when thinking about sun exposure and what happens in our body? So vitamin D is derived, you can eat vitamin D certainly, but you derive vitamin D from the synthesis of cholesterol in your skin and UV interaction. So as UV light hits your skin, cholesterol in the skin is converted into vitamin D. And so if we're talking about vitamin S as in sunshine exposure, beyond vitamin D, there's every frequency of light wavelength that we're receiving when we get the sun. Many of them have multiple potential healing properties, but some of the most well-studied are ultraviolet radiation on the skin actually increasing or improving immune function. This is non-vitamin D related, so it's a specifically different mechanism. We also know that, for example, red light, infrared, accelerates the rate at which your mitochondria can produce energy. Vitamin S, sunshine, allows for that. Remember, those long wavelengths of red light can permeate through skin, can permeate through clothing and bone. And so it has a profound effect on mitochondrial energy production. We know that sunlight can be harnessed into increased energy, much the same way a plant might synthesize energy from sunlight directly through its chlorophyll mechanism. Humans can increase their ability to produce energy through mitochondrial mechanism through light exposure directly. So if you're not getting that light exposure, if you're indoors every day with predominantly blue light spike exposure, you're not getting access to that other frequency or wavelength of light from the sun that allows your body to generate adequate energy and run its metabolic processes. So vitamin S would be that aspect over the vitamin D component. Tammy, great question. I'm taking 3 caps of Ultra MG. Doses you suggest of serine, glycine, and theanine. Since these are amino acids, will they throw off the balance of other amino acids? Can you continue this for long term? Good question, Beth. So there's a general rule: if you're taking serine and glycine and theanine, no, you're not going to do anything major. Look, you can, some of the doses that you're getting, you could get equal doses in food. And when you eat food, you're not necessarily throwing off your balances, but anywhere between 1 and 3 grams of any of those things. Of serine and glycine, not so much theanine. Theanine between 100 and 800 milligrams. Very safe, will not throw off the amino acid balance of your body, especially if you have a well-rounded diet where you're eating a diverse array of different foods and proteins. Is it safe to continue them long-term? Yes. The research on this is pretty clear that there's no real long-term side effects or ramifications for using those amino acids. Theanine being a plant-based amino acid, not one that humans require, very, very safe, even at higher doses, does not form an addictive trait or quality, and can definitely be used in longer terms without worrying about potential problems. Now, as with anything, if you experience side effects that are untoward, from taking any supplement, whether it's those or any other. You definitely you want to take a closer look at those things, because everybody's entitled to their own unique biochemical response to something, and that it may be just your reaction, and it may not be common in everyone, but still your reaction matters more to you than it does everyone else. Magnesium, ashwagandha, L-theanine give me severe insomnia, even if taken in the early AM. So if you're getting insomnia from those, then you might consider B vitamins being low. B vitamins play multiple roles in the cofactors involved in some of those pathways, and so sometimes when people have B vitamin deficiency as a backdrop, they get a paradoxical reaction to nutrients that are supposed to actually calm us down and get us ready for sleep. And so that may be something that you might want to look into. If you feel stressed and jittery when taking methylated B vitamins, but at the same time feel energized and strong, how can you manage the stress? You're taking too much, Kim. You might consider lowering your dose. Some people are ultra sensitive to kind of what we would call therapeutic levels of methylated B vitamins. And this is one of the reasons why my formula Ultra Nutrients was designed with that in mind. Like it's lower quantities, it's still effective quantities, but it's lower quantities of those B vitamins for people like you who don't tolerate higher doses without feeling somewhat jittery. So that would be what I would consider. Now, if that lower dose, it still makes you jittery, you might want to consider other things to help with your stress beyond the B vitamins. Things we talked about in Tuesday's show, like magnesium or theanine or serine or glycine. Again, just some of these other nutrients that can have calmative-like effect. Looking for advice on my ionate to FSA. I think I answered that one. Is anemia of chronic inflammation the same as anemia of chronic disease? Yes. Chronic disease is inflammation, right? That's what chronic disease is. It's a chronic inflammation over time, contributes to tissue degradation that leads to symptoms that then doctors diagnose as chronic disease. So the anemia can be present as long as the inflammation is present, because heightened inflammation disrupts the way your body is capable of using iron. And so we see that iron trapping that occurs causing the anemia of chronic inflammation or chronic disease. I was reading that the Dutch research said that people with leaky gut should not use coconut oil. Is that true? I was reading that the Dutch research said that people with leaky gut should not use coconut oil. I don't agree with that statement. I don't think coconut oil is necessarily problematic. I think the problem is the leaky gut, not the coconut. And let me give you an example where coconut oil in somebody who has leaky gut might actually be a good idea. Let's say that person with leaky gut, is hypothetical, has a yeast infection or a yeast overgrowth. And that's what's driving the leaky gut. Now, in this case, the use of coconut oil, which is rich in things like caprylic acid, has antifungal effect. So it actually might have a medicinal benefit in neutralizing the yeast imbalance, and therefore, in turn, getting the leaky gut under better control. So I wouldn't make the blanket statement. And Mara, that's true really of any study. I mean, we can read studies and look at the data and interpret the information. And drawing solid conclusions about everyone in the population from any one study is never a good idea. We can't draw solid conclusions from any one study because there's too many variables, too much biochemical individuality from one person to the next. But I wouldn't make the statement that no one with leaky gut should take coconut oil. I would really want to know why that person has leaky gut, reverse engineer that process so that person could be guided down the road of restoring their gut function. Let's see. And those of you who missed Tuesday's show and you want to get access to that show and access to those show notes, if you comment stress in the comments below. We'll make sure that that we get that information sent over to you if you missed it. Is there a no grain, no pain acceptable boudin? Seriously, I miss the stuff. And when folks come to visit, they bring it, and it is a painful thing not being able to eat it. This would be one of those things where you'd have to come up with your own potential recipe. We don't have one in our recipe database. We have a chef that does a lot of our recipes for us at Gluten-Free Society, but I don't think that's one that we have. But maybe you could create one and then share it with us. I mean, that's something also that's an option as you guys become pros at following no grain, no pain. Feeding back the community that's feeding you is always great because we can all learn together. Let's see here. Yeah, if somebody says, so frustrating when the show starts and there's no clue from YouTube. YouTube's not always going to send you notifications. And sometimes it's because they just don't. Sometimes because your phone is not set up to receive from the YouTube app. And so there's a setting that you might check. But, you know, the reality is that we also do see some blockage or shadow blockage. And so the best way to avoid that is reach out to glutenfreesociety.org. If you go over there, make sure you're on my email, sign up for our email newsletter. You will get, every time we go live, you will get a notice before the show goes live with a link to jump right in. So keep that in mind too. Let's see. What do you suggest for a functional tic disorder? Are you talking about like neurological tics? I assume you are, Sandy. If you're talking about neurological tics, you need to get tested. Neurological tics are typically autoimmune process where your immune system is creating antibodies against structures in your nervous system driving tics. Very commonly going grain-free is very helpful. I've seen a lot of tic disorders improve with grain-free diet. So no grain, no pain. Get a copy of the book, read it, follow the 30-day plan. That would be a great place to start. Secondarily, looking at other potentials for food reactions. I mean, you can be reactive to gluten and it can drive autoimmune processes, but so can other foods. So getting food allergy, food sensitivity testing done. You can do that through Gluten-Free Society. We have an entire array of lab testing that you guys can tap into. We do genetic testing for gluten, we do food sensitivity testing, and we do micronutrient deficiency testing. So any of those of you watching who didn't know that, I'm going to put a link in now. And you can go read more about those tests and see if those are a good fit for you. But definitely I would consider testing. Like my motto is test, don't guess. It's an interesting thing. So when I was a young doctor, like the first 5 years of practice, and this is my 26th year. But first 5 years, I was we'll just say I was objective, but I didn't do as much testing. I tried to just do more guiding, helping people, guide them in the right direction around food. And what I found very early on in practice is you could give a person the information that could save their life, and their compliance was usually under 30%. And it was because there was no objective basis for the advice you were giving them. Person will make every excuse in the world not to change their diet psychologically if they're not certain it's the right change to make. Testing removes the doubt. And I say that from a psychological perspective, but I also say that just from an objective standpoint. Like if you read my book, No Grain, No Pain, the first story in that book was a little girl who had 6 months to live, and she was reactive to blueberries. And the only way we determined that was we tested her. We would never have known. And every morning she was drinking a blueberry smoothie, and it was just making her sicker and sicker and sicker. So testing and not guessing is probably one of the best pieces of advice I can give any of you who maybe have struggled with your health and struggled with chronic inflammation. You don't know why. When you test, you get clarity. When you have clarity, you can take concisive action with confidence. Action over time equals outcomes. And if the action is targeted biochemically to what your body needs, then the outcomes are predictably good. If the action that you're taking is guesswork and guess framing, then sometimes the outcome is good if you guess properly. But if you're guessing incorrectly, you lose months. You lose the window of opportunity. And it's what we call, there's a very real name for it. It's called lost opportunity cost, right? When you struggle in your illness without adequate knowledge, you've lost opportunity of living quality life over that time frame as you've guessed your way to not get healthy. So to me, guessing is off the table. I don't even do it anymore. If somebody comes into my office and says, Dr. Osborne, I want you to help me, but I want you to guess at me, my advice is going to be no. I want you to go and guess it yourself. You have a better context for guessing at yourself than I do. Go watch all the free videos and the trainings that I've got. Read my book and follow that. But save that space for somebody who really wants to understand how to have a biochemical blueprint that they can follow. Because again, I can't guess better than you can about your own body. I don't have the context and the advantage of living inside of you, feeling what you feel, experiencing what you experience, and going through your day with you. And that's why I'm at a disadvantage. Now I'm at an advantage in terms of knowledge, because there's a lot floating up around in this brain that it's based on 26 years of experience and education and learning and reinforcement. But and so in that context, I could guess a little, but it just doesn't serve people. You don't go to the doctor for the doctor to guess. You go to the doctor because the doctor has skills and technology and experience where they can minimize guesswork and maximize objective planning so that the outcome for you is predictably better instead of not. And the reason I say all that is not to pick on anybody. It's just that I know what chronic illness does to the psyche, and I know what it does to a person, and it's miserable. The amount of people I've seen in my years of practice that have struggled with their illness for 5 or more years. I mean, the average person I see has seen 5 to 10 doctors. They've struggled in their illness for decades. They're frustrated. They don't see light at the end of the tunnel as easily as they did when they were young. Their hope is basically being extinguished day by day. And a large part of the reason why is that they've worked with doctors that are speculative, that have guessed. They've worked with non-comprehensive programs, or they've speculated themselves about what their body might need, but haven't really dialed into to getting objective measurements that might save their life and change their life. So when you hear me say test, don't guess, I know that's kind of, for a lot of you that watch the show every week, it sounds like a broken record, but it is honestly the best advice I can give. It's to get clarity around you as a unique person so that you don't have to guess and lose the opportunity of a life well lived and a life better lived because you feel well and you can deliver your best self to the ones you care about and love, because you are your best self when you have great guidance. Okay. Let's see. We've been blessed with much needed clouds and rain. Are you better if with a red light device or cloudy outdoor time on those days? You still get red light in the clouds. So clouds are fine. Clouds are not going to block out the red light. So, and by the way, sunlight trumps any technology 1,000% of the time. So like if you're, where I like technology like red light therapy and UV light therapy is those of you that live far north and you've got these grueling 6-month or more long winters and you don't have the access to the light. It's just not there. Or the weather's so cold and grueling that your life's in jeopardy for being outside. That's where technology can really enhance your winter months. But those of you who live down south, if you have the option of choosing outside versus a technology, a lamp, or an infrared light, or one of these tables that people get in to get exposures, like sunlight wins all day long, and it's because it's more comprehensive. It contains the full spectrum. Okay, let's see here. I like this comment. So Java says, stress prevents REM sleep with me. I recently began taking your ultra-glycine along with 3 milligrams of melatonin and L-tryptophan to help. It seems to help. Love the ultra glycine. Yeah, I love it too. Glycine is so powerful. It blocks the NMDA receptors in the nervous system and really calms the mind and allows for a more peaceful and more restful sleep. And what I love about it is it's natural. It's not addictive. You can take it in water. It actually tastes like sugar. So there's no the old Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. Well, in this case of glycine, it's like it tastes like a spoonful of sugar. So you don't have to take anything bitter or nasty to get the effect. And there's no habit formation or addiction. How does eating really late at night affect stress in a stressed person? I wouldn't be concerned about nighttime eating, Blake, to be honest with you. The only time we really get worried or want people to not eat at night is that if you eat a really big meal and your stomach's full and you lie down on your back and now you're dealing with reflux or poor digestion, that's where eating at night might be problematic for some of you. But remember that sleep promotes digestion, right? As long as your stomach's not overly full. So part of the eating at night conundrum is not it is going to impact your stress in a negative way. It's actually sleep can actually be quite beneficial to digestion, and so just don't overeat at night. Don't eat that meal that you have to undo your top button on your pants because you've stuffed yourself so full. But if you have a light meal at night, that's not a problem. A lot of people fear eating at night. Why? Because they've been told they'll gain weight. There's a kind of a myth or an urban legend or so, if you will, that eating at night causes fat gain, and that's BS. It doesn't happen that way. Nighttime eating does not make you gain weight. Overeating as a total in your day makes you gain weight. Let's see. Kyle says, "Hey, can we talk about NMN? I take 500 milligrams a day, and do you make the supplement?" Yes, we do. We have a product, Kyle, called Graceful Aging, which is an NMN supplement. And if you're interested in using one of ours, but NMN is a form of vitamin B3. It's very, very critical for the cell energy production. So think of it as one of the main constituents that allows your mitochondria to pump electrons and to generate ATP. And so in that regard, it's a critical element, right? Vitamin B3 is essential. But MNN and NAD is another kind of way to say it or to put it, but it's good. I mean, it's a good product. It's a good supplement. It can be very helpful. We use it a lot clinically when people have vitamin B3 deficiencies on their INA. Oftentimes we'll use that product. Depending on how well they tolerate NAD, we sometimes will use NAD. We'll sometimes use NMN. Or sometimes we'll just use straight nicotinic acid, vitamin B3, but the flushing with that can sometimes be problematic. But I don't know if that was your question or not. I think it was. But we're actually coming out here in the next few months. We're going to be doing a full crash course on NMN. So make sure you're subscribed to the channel and to our email. And when that class comes out, you'll get notified because we'll be doing a deep dive and going into, probably a full hour long, rendition of it. All right, somebody's got a lot of people loving glycine. Yeah, glycine is great in your tea. I use it in my matcha. Kimberly says glycine is bueno. I love glycine. I have as a matter of fact, this is how much I love it. I have a bottle of it in my side drawer in my desk. I actually find that it gives me, if I'm having a slower day, that I can take some glycine and it just kind of calms things down and gives me really good focus. So even beyond the sleep, I mean, I don't use it personally for sleep, but although it works really well for that, I actually like it for its ability to help me focus and not be stimulated. I don't like stimulants. I don't like a lot of caffeine or a lot of the stimulant type supplements that people take, the jitteriness. I don't want that kind of energy. I want smooth, calm, focused, like really entrenched energy. And to me, glycine is one of the best for that. I'm very concerned with eating after dark because the glucose levels remain high all through the night, which keeps your insulin too high. What's your opinion of this? Eat after dark and then go for a short walk. If you're worried about walking in the dark outside, then walk on your treadmill. And if you don't have one, maybe consider one. You'll lower or drop your blood glucose after a meal by taking a mild walk. Sometimes what I'll do after a meal is I might just do some light exercise, light stretching, and maybe, bang out, 20, 30 push-ups, maybe do some light stretching, some light yoga positions. All that'll help lower or drop that blood glucose after a meal in the evening. But you shouldn't be worried about your insulin being high, your glucose being high at night because you ate at night. Like if you're worried about that, it's because you have a pre-diabetic or a diabetic problem, and that needs to be solved because your worry shouldn't be so great. If your insulin and your glucose staying too high at night, it's because you probably have an insulin resistance or a chronic inflammation that's driving up glucagon or a cortisol problem. And so that's why that sugar's staying high, not necessarily because of the meal itself. You should be able to eat and have control and regulation of that glucose through proper hormone communication and functioning. And if you don't, then that's a metabolic problem that you have to resolve and work to solve. My brother's going through chemotherapy treatment. Any supplements that would help support his immune system? I'm sorry your brother's going through that. I've watched people I love go through that, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. Probably the best thing that he should do is high dose folate, methylfolate, and high dose methylcobalamin. One of the side effects of chemotherapy is destruction of cells. And the cells first affected, typically are the cells of the GI tract. This is why chemo causes nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, because it decimates the short-lived cells of the GI tract. They have a 2 to 7 day life cycle, and they're affected first. Under that auspice, you need folate and B12 to regenerate the DNA for those cells so that they can keep up with the demand, so they can make new children to replace the damaged cells. And so high dose vitamin B12, high dose folate can be very effective for people on chemo to kind of preserve them from having a lot of that GI issue that they're having. Now we could do a whole master class on cancer as far as like what a person should be doing with cancer. This isn't to scare your brother or to comment that he's doing anything wrong. Everybody's got to make their own decision when it comes to cancer. I can just tell you from my own personal experience and from my clinical experience, you couldn't threaten me enough to get me to do any kind of chemo therapy. I would never do it, and I stand firm by that statement. It would be something I would absolutely never do, no matter what. Because we won't go there. My point is, I would encourage you to encourage your brother to look into alternatives for cancer treatment beyond chemotherapy and radiation. The track record and the success record of those therapies, the way those studies are published, it's really, really highly questionable research and science, in my opinion. And it's a very profitable industry. It's not to say I'm avoid or opposed to for people making profit in the work they do. Everyone makes profit in the work they do. That's, you trade your time for dollars. That's what everyone does in order to survive and buy their clothes and their food, etc. But in an industry where the treatment can be harmful, we really have to weigh those scenarios a lot more, right? So when a doctor's profiting off of selling the chemotherapy, then the recommendation bias can be great. And when the recommendation is bias is great, then the trust factor can be manipulated, and that's not good, especially when there's a downside. It's different if the recommendation causes no harm. The chemotherapy is race, basically. It's the doctor saying, let's destroy your tissues while simultaneously trying to kill the cancer and hope that your body is stronger than the cancer. And by the way, eat whatever you want and don't worry about vitamins and minerals, because that doesn't play a role in cancer, and nutrition is not important. Just keep your calories up and eat the ice cream and eat the garbage food as long as your calories up. Like that's the general advice in chemotherapy and from the cancer doctors, oncologists, most of them, not all, but most of them. And it's bad advice. Nutrition has everything to do with cancer. Cancer is a disease caused by external environmental factors, many of which are food-based, many of which are chemical or toxin-based. And so if you're not addressing the chemicals and the toxins in the food, chemo may work in the first go round, but what we generally tend to see is it works the first go round, but then some time goes by and the cancer just comes back even stronger, but the body's weaker. So then the body can't handle chemo another time. Or if it does, it just decimates quality of life. And so then you have to ask the question, is taking this therapy actually going to save my life? Or is it going to even extend my life? Or is it going to decimate the quality of the life I have left? And should I consider going an alternative route where I can maintain my quality of life while I endeavor to try to get a better understanding of why this cancer occurred in the first place? Cancers, just like autoimmune diseases, have causes. And what are they? It's the same causes, right? Because cancers, for the most part, it's end-stage autoimmune disease. It's what it is. And any of you have watched any of my work on autoimmunity and my lectures abroad on autoimmunity, you know that food, chemicals, microbes, and nutritional deficiencies are the fundamental controlling factors that you have power to shape in your life to help your body overcome cancer. We all have cancer cells at any given time. You have cancer cells floating in you right now, even if you're perfectly healthy. Your body's immune system, its job is to sentry those cells and to make sure they don't grow out of control. And when you're being bombarded by everything else in the environment that isn't good for you, and when you're malnourished, your body doesn't have the wherewithal or strength to maintain that fight, to maintain that sentry of cancer cells. And that's when we end up with a diagnosis. So when it comes to cancer, you've got to reverse engineer those factors, and you've got to come back and say, what is my part? What is my responsibility to myself? Because chemo is a passive therapy. It's basically, like I said, it's poisoning the cancer in hopes that your body is stronger than the cancer. It's a race, and there's always a downside, a tremendous one. Anyway, I know that's not the question, but I really just sincerely mean this. I hope that you can convince your brother to seek additional help and alternatives. And I know you have his best interests in mind, but start with B vitamins, B12, and folate at higher doses. I would probably push 10,000 micrograms of B12 and probably close to 4,000 of folate at least as a starting place. But I'd also do INA testing to determine any other deficiencies. The problem, again, in oncology is the doctors there will tell you, we don't want you doing nutrition. Nutrition competes with chemo. And it's just like, I don't know, it's insanity in my opinion, but a lot of people, cancer's scary. And you got to make the decision you're the most comfortable with, because at the end of the day, it's your life and no one else's. But just my take. What would you suggest for somebody in the middle of illness, currently sick, thought I took enough supplements, but I'm the caboose? Been watching the show, sick, train wreck, go through house. Are you talking about cold and flu type sick? I'm going to assume you are. Look, if you're sick, check out my immune protocol. My immune protocol, I'll see if I can find it for you and just post it. But it's pretty lengthy, but there's a lot of different nutrients that we recommend that will boost and get that immune system fired up and working effectively to help support you to get through that in a more expedient manner. So I'm going to type that in. There you go. You should see that in the comments. Let's see here. It's really annoying to hear an infectious disease doctor criticizing glyphosate research. Is the research really so weak? It's not that the research is weak, it's that it's corrupt. I mean, there's a big difference between good research and corrupt research. And when the position paper that the FDA used to approve glyphosate as safe was actually found to be corrupt 20 years later, that's the problem. That's what the infectious disease doctors should be criticizing, is the allowance of medicine to allot for contamination with weak minds and greedy minds. Because, I mean, look, think of it. Does a chemical that's designed to destroy life, does that make sense to put that all over your food and then eat it? I mean, just from a common sense perspective, you don't need the 1,000 years of science to, to have good judgment. Like, you see something that's poisoning the ground and poisoning the plant, you are the life. We are all connected. We're connected to the earth. We're connected to the plants. At the sake of not sound like a tree hugger, but I mean, I at heart, I'm a conservative person, and that includes conservation of our earth, of our planet, the one that we inherited from people before us. And if we spend our lives poisoning it without regard to make money, then what are we going to leave for our children and our grandchildren? And sometimes, science, the word science is just too heavily emphasized. Follow the science. What does that mean? Well, science has been wrong. Science is often wrong. Science takes time, and it's never settled, and you have research, and sometimes the science is flawed because of the design of the study. I mean, I could do 1,000 studies on nutrition, and I could return 1,000 negative studies about how crappy nutrition is and how you should never try vitamin supplements if I design the study right. If I design the doses too low, or I studied the wrong kind of people, I could deliver right into the hands of the pharmaceutical industry a bunch of great studies that would deter people from taking vitamins and minerals, or thinking about diet as part of a nutritional strategy around improving their health. That's the problem with science, is that the people that are doing it, are they being paid by those with integrity and ethics and morals? And oftentimes the answer is no. And conflicts of interest are not always reported in these studies. I mean, how many times have we found doctors doing the research that didn't display their conflict of interest, but then came to later find out they had tremendous conflict of interest? And the FDA is full of that. So anyway, that's a rant, but glyphosate's poison. And there's a reason why juries of our peers are coming back and agreeing with that statement, because it's causing cancer in people and it's making people sick. And it doesn't, just from a common sense perspective. Anyway. Ooh, I like this question. So what supplements and vitamins for second and third degree burns? You got to get protein. I would be at, a gram of protein per pound of body weight very easily, Lita, on that, because you've got to get protein up. The amount of protein lost through burns is tremendous. And so for that healing and repairing to happen, you've got to replace that protein. I would go very heavy on L-glutamine. I would consider probably 5 to 10 grams of L-glutamine per day with a very serious burn. As a matter of fact, in a hospital setting, high doses of glutamine has been shown to increase healing time. It's been shown to double healing time. So I would look to definitely protein, definitely higher dose glutamine. I'd look to higher dose zinc as a key component to skin and skin repair. I would look to all those things in high quantities. And then beyond that, very high doses of vitamin C to bowel tolerance, to knit the collagen that forms skin so that we get the skin to heal. I would look at copper somewhere in the neighborhood of a 7.5 to 1 ratio. So like zinc, for every milligram of zinc, or rather for every 7.5 milligrams of zinc, you want to take 1 gram of copper. So zinc to copper ratio of 7.5 to 1. Both are necessary for collagen and skin healing and formation. Roundup gave me temporary muscle spasms as a kid, so I consider it a neurotoxin. Yeah, a lot of stories I've heard like that. What are your thoughts about elemental diet for SIBO? I mean, it can be effective, but it can also not be. Elemental can sometimes be helpful, but my biggest fear with elemental diets is the caloric restriction and the nutritional restriction. Most of my experience in people that have had persistent SIBO despite antibiotic use or antimicrobial use is that they either haven't changed their diet effectively, and so they're driving the problem through diet. Because remember, certain types of diets will feed the microbes that are overgrowing in the small intestine. Or they don't actually have SIBO, they have SIFO, small intestinal fungal overgrowth. The two mimic each other and share a lot of the same lab values. Or they're in mold. When a person's in mold, it's very, very common for SIBO to be a consequential side effect. So if you've struggled in all those regards, I would consider having your mycotoxin levels measured and looking for mold, or having a mold investigation in your home. That's tough. I know, Tanya. The best advice I could give any of you who are enlightened enough to know that diet and lifestyle matter for any kind of illness. Tanya says, I'm battling my daughter-in-law over gluten and glyphosate with my autistic grandson. She doesn't get it. I'm so frustrated. It's tough when you see somebody you love being harmed by somebody else who you love, and them not getting it, but it's also not your decision to make. And the answer there is, in order to preserve the relationship and have one, you kind of have to tread carefully, or you'll lose the relationship altogether. But it's never an easy situation to be in. My advice in that type of situation is to plant little seeds here and there and use positive reinforcement when you see something being done well, as opposed to judgment and snippet behavior, or calling up. Because when you call a person out and say, oh, you're wrong, you're doing it wrong, ultimately you're not gonna win there, especially with a young independent mother who's wanting to be the mom to her child and wanting to play by the rules of parenting that she wants to play by and not yours. But it doesn't make the situation any easier. I fall asleep immediately but wake after approximately 4 hours and can get back to sleep again. I take magnesium glycine before bed. How can I sleep continuously? Wendy, watch my master class on sleep. Tons of information in that class. But depending on what time you go to bed, so I mean, you're waking up 4 hours in. I don't know what time you go to bed. If it's 9 o'clock and you're waking at 1, and that's real consistent. If you're waking up between 1 and 2, that's sometimes referred to as, in Chinese medicine, as we call the hours of the liver, the hours of detox. And so a lot of people that are waking up at that time have underlying liver issues. And so you might consider liver support and looking for things that might be triggering liver issues directly. For a lot of people, it's food. It's the wrong diet. And it's driving liver damage and inflammation that leads to that wake cycle, that cortisol spike at night around that time frame. So I would look at that as a mechanism of what might be contributing to your sleep woes. But watch my master class on sleep, because I think that, of anything, that'll be super helpful for you. Yeah, somebody said on the Trust the Science, and they quoted Fauci on I am the science. Yeah, what a pompous asshole. That guy should have been, well, just my opinion, that guy should have been in prison for the damage he did. I mean, the audacity. How many of you, raise your hand in the chat, how many of you would love to have somebody else make all of the decisions about your health for you? Because that's what he was basically doing, and he was gaslighting anyone who had a differing opinion or desire to do what they wanted us to do. But anyway, not to open up old wounds. Sometimes it just gets me mad again. But anyway, let's not open up old wounds. Can't change what happened. So what I'm doing in the feed here, Wendy, I'm putting in the link to comprehensive sleep information for you. So you might go back and check that out. I put that in there for you as a agent of help. Okay. I love this. Great information. December will be 10 years off all my RA meds just by changing my diet and replenishing the nutrients from my bad diet. I was 55. It was not easy. Have not needed to take away any meds. I love that. I love that you shared that. Hopefully some of you may also deal with RA, are finding hope in that message. But it is very possible to get off your meds. It's very possible to put RA into remission. I've seen it over and over and over again, and it's the central work of my book, No Grain, No Pain. Have you heard of fibrinolytic enzymes that can break down scar tissue around surgery sites? I mean, fibrinolytic enzymes are great. I actually have a formula called Matrozyme, which is full of different types of enzymes that do that, among other things, proteases that not only are helpful in scar tissue, but also helpful in just as their anti-inflammatory effect in supporting recovery and healing. So yes, I've heard of that. If you have a specific question about them, feel free to ask. Oh, thank you, Midge. Midge says, I wanted to thank you for your continued advocacy for us, the people, and for essentially free information we don't get from our doctors. Much love back. I'm glad that you find value in it all. That means a lot that you're thankful. Let's see. Your book saved my life and my mother's life. Praise Jesus. Amen. I'm glad to hear that, Kyle. Super excited that my work could change your life. Are your tests available for international customers as well? Christiane is asking, and do you do any chance also offer dogs hair testing? We don't do any hair testing, Christiana. So in that regard, in my opinion, hair testing is not an accurate way to assess nutrition or food reactions. I know there's some companies online that are selling that, and it's nonsense. In my opinion, you're not going to get accurate results from hair in that way. But as far as availability of our testing, our tests are blood tests, and yes, they can be available internationally, but not through Gluten-Free Society. If you want to do our tests, then that requires that you become a client at our clinic, and we do work with people internationally in that regard. And you can reach out to our clinic, Origins, and I can put that information in. I'm going to put a link to our clinic for you in the feed, and that goes for any of you if you're looking to work with me and my team. Myself or Dr. Driscoll, you can just reach out to our practice and schedule a discovery call with one of my team and see if it works for you, if it's a good fit. Been cleaning up my diet. Finally diagnosed with celiac. Helped get me to tighten up my gluten-free diet and cross-contamination. Headaches have reduced to almost zero. Same with migraines. Fist bump. That's awesome. Love it. Diet's everything. I mean, it's the place you start. I mean, a lot of people try to start with supplements. They try to start with medication. And look, I love supplements. I mean, we sell supplements. It's not a newsflash, but we don't sell supplements first. We don't say profits over intelligence. Diet change has got to be your first move. That book right there, No Grain, No Pain, that book right there can change your life. And that's where anyone watching this show should start, because you may find that just by following that, the bulk of your problems go away. I mean, that's what the book was based on. It was based on multiple decades of practical clinical experience in helping people overcome autoimmune disease. So start there. It's the first place, the easiest place to start. It's the cheapest place to start. Many of you have commented over the years, functional medicine's, it's not inexpensive. Doing testing is not free. It does have a cost for sure. Being sick your whole life also has a cost, a different kind. But the diet change doesn't have a cost. You're going to buy food. Changing what you buy, you can say, well, it's more expensive to eat healthy. Yeah, it's actually more expensive to live unhealthy. So keep that in mind. You're investing in your health. As opposed to just eating as if it's a day duty that, be damned the consequences. You're investing in your health. So anyway, and those of you who just want to copy my book, but also want to buy supplements, no, you can get a free copy. We offer free copies of No Grain, No Pain to our customers. If you spend $75 in our store and you use promo code FREEBOOK, we'll send you a copy of No Grain, No Pain absolutely free. So know that that's something you can also do. Do you believe that a person with HLA-DQ alpha 101 can become celiac when considered by doctors to only be gluten sensitive? Yeah, you can. Anybody can become celiac. It's just that 99% of celiacs have HLA-DQ2 and HLA-DQ8. It doesn't mean that there aren't celiacs without 2s and 8s. So yes, you could still become a celiac with an HLA-DQ alpha 1 genotype. So, yeah, the simple answer, yeah. How to fix gallbladder and for the bike to be unplugged for an 80-year-old doctor. Not sure if that's a typo. How do you fix the gallbladder and for the bike to be unplugged? Well, I mean, the gallbladder, it's not about fixing the gallbladder. It's about finding out what's decimating it. Typically, the gallbladder is impacted by the diet in a big way. So the things we see do the most damage to the liver and gallbladder are food allergies, food sensitivities, particularly gluten, but also sugar, and highly processed seed oils are all good places to start with avoidance of. And sometimes, though, the gallbladder is not functioning well because the bile salts themselves are sludgy. They're crystallizing and they're forming stones instead of a liquid that helps you digest your fat. So in many cases, vitamin C and taurine are very good supplements to consider supporting, the gallbladder itself. Nutrients for bladder spasms post indwelling catheter for 20 days. Don't want meds. So if you're having bladder spasms, I'd say use CalMag. We have a product called Ultra CalMag, and 6 to 8 a day. I'd also make sure you're getting adequate electrolytes. Spasms are those muscle contractions, right? And when you have involuntary muscle contractions, whether it's the bladder or any other muscle for that matter, you've got to start with fundamental electrolytes because they're regulatory in terms of those contractions and relaxations. So I would start there. That would be the first place I'd look at for trying to tame any kind of spasm. Beyond that, there's nuance. There could be a number of other reasons. There could be inflammatory reactions that are occurring as a result of that catheter. Somebody could have damaged you going in, and that inflammation to that tissue could be driving some of that spasm as well. In which case, I would look at our post-surgery protocols, our nutritional post-surgery protocols, high doses of vitamin C, high doses of B vitamins and other nutrients, and making sure you're getting enough protein in your diet so that potentially, if that is damaged, it'll heal more effectively. Can Hashimoto's be put in remission? Yes. Simply put, yes. Hashimoto's can be. I've seen antibodies go away in people. So, I mean, simple answer, yes. You got to figure out what's triggering it. Levothyroxine is not, although it's treating the thyroid hormone itself, it's not treating the why of why you're having antibodies. The antibody triggers are generally going to be food, chemicals, microbes, and nutrient deficiencies. I want to do your protocol for mold. How long will I need to do? A good starting point is about 12 weeks is generally what we do clinically for people. So you could start at 12. But I would consider, if you're doing protocol because you suspect you have a history of mold and mycotoxins, then make sure you're out of the mold. Like, don't bother with the protocol if you're still living in a moldy environment. It's the wrong move. A lot of people just want to sell a mold protocol, but the real encouragement and the real recovery begins when you get out of mold. I mean, we lost our house to mold. If you know my mold story at all, we lost an entire home. My dog died. My family was very sick, and what helped my family the most, number one factor in our treatment, was getting the hell out. I don't think we would have recovered had we not left that home. No matter, with all my knowledge, I could have pumped the right nutrients. We could have eaten the right foods. We could have done all the right things. But when you're being poisoned, excessively day in and day out, no protocol is going to fix the fact that you're being poisoned. So number one rule of mold, get out of the mold if you want to heal and repair. Does the estradiol patch interfere with stress and adrenal glands? Meaning, do I need to take more adrenal calm if I'm taking estrogen, which has really helped me? Not necessarily. Look, if estrogen's been really helpful for you, I think the biggest thing to do, if you're trying to patch this out, is to get your cortisol values measured, get your DHEA levels measured, and make sure that your doctor who's prescribed you your estradiol is monitoring your estrogen, to make sure you're not going into the super physiological dose range. But taking estrogen does not necessarily put a tremendous amount of stress or pressure on the adrenal glands. If anything, part of how we make estrogen in women is through the adrenal glands' production of a hormone called DHEA. And so by taking estradiol, you're actually taking pressure off of the adrenal glands to convert DHEA into estrogen. So in that regard, it could actually be helpful for your adrenals, not necessarily damaging or stressing them. I was exposed in my teen years to 1973 Michigan PBB disaster. Oh. I'm no grain, no pain, thanks to you. Is it true that if you have one autoimmune disease, your chances for others are greater? Yes, it's true. As a matter of fact, statistically speaking, if you have one, without fixing the one, on average, the average person will develop 7. So 1 + 6 over your lifetime is the statistical reality of autoimmunity. That's why it's always best to figure it out. Your body's so smart. When you get an autoimmune disease, the damage and the inflammation will go on. Let's say it's in the thyroid. Because here's what sometimes happens. People get an autoimmune disease, they'll go on and they'll have thyroid problems for years. And then all of a sudden, their thyroid improves to a certain extent. And now they feel all this, joint pain. And that joint pain, there was no trauma. They didn't damage themselves per se. It just came on. It's onset chronic inflammatory joint pain. And then that'll happen for several years. And if they went to a rheumatologist, they would have positive rheumatoid factor or positive ANA or positive ESR or CRP or one of these other markers that are commonly used to investigate for autoimmune arthritis. And then a few years later, they might come back and now they've got fatty liver and, they've got an autoimmune hepatitis, right? So the body pushes the damage from one tissue to the next because in its infinite wisdom, it's trying to preserve you. It's trying to help you continue to live and survive. So it's spreading that damage around and not allowing one organ or one tissue to be totally decimated. And this is one of the reasons why we see what I call migratory autoimmunity, where your autoimmune disease is just migrating around your body and it's manifesting in multitudes of different ways. And it's just another way your body's trying to alert you to the fact that things are breaking down and you need to make some aggressive changes. So that's why you want to determine it, right? So when we go back to fundamentally what causes autoimmunity, it's food, chemicals, microbes, and nutritional deficiencies. Measuring those 4 becomes your top priority. You're trying to biochemically blueprint your decision-making matrix into an autoimmune recession or diminishment. 6 months sober from alcohol. Congratulations. What amino acids are best to supplement with to heal? If you're 6 months beyond it, I can't imagine you're still going through any kind of withdrawal. If you were going through withdrawal, there's like tyrosine and phenylalanine that can be really helpful in withdrawal situations. Glycine can be really helpful for withdrawal symptoms, but at 6 months, you're probably beyond that. So I wouldn't say that you need to worry about like any one in particular. I would say the biggest thing would be making sure you're eating enough total protein in your diet every day. And what does that look like? It looks like approximately 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. So if you're eating enough of that, that should get you the protein that your body needs to recover and to heal. Where alcoholism really affects most is in the B vitamin category. So from a healing perspective, chronic alcoholism creates mass scale B vitamin and water soluble vitamin deficit. So consider those. I would consider those more. You might benefit from an INA intracellular nutrient analysis. Get dialed in, because there are a couple of different things. So like how do I want to say this? When you're sick, and alcoholism is sickness. We'll put that in the category of chronic inflammation, right, and malnutrition. Your body goes almost into like a preservation mode. It doesn't have the resources to heal and repair everything. So it's just using the minimum resources to try to keep the lights on and to keep you going and keep you somewhat functional. Once you kick what's driving the inflammation out of your life, your body, imagine your body letting up a sigh of relief and saying, hallelujah, we can now heal. The things that's causing the damage are no longer here, and now we can take our resources and we can devote them to repair. When that happens, you can actually end up several months after the fact in a more nutritionally deficit state because of something called nutritional rebounding. It's when your body says, hallelujah, give me the nutrients, and you start healing and repairing. You're burning through nutrients much more quickly in an attempt to heal the damage from the past transgressions. And that's perfect timing for measuring, because now you can get dialed into what your body actually needs instead of speculating what might be beneficial. That protein's important, B vitamins are important on the surface as a general recommendation. But I'm going to go back to what I said earlier in the show. Test, don't guess. Get dialed in. That's the best thing you can do. Hi, I'm 20. I already have some gray hair. Should I do something? Could it be because of stress? I eat healthy and work out 3 to 4 times a week. Consider supplementation. If you're 20 and you're seeing gray hair, so like gray hair is oxidation. The pigments that allow for hair color are highly susceptible to free radical damage. And if you're exercising aggressively, that can be a form of good and bad stress in that regard. But what I would say would be that you would probably want to consider a good quality multivitamin, multimineral like Ultra Nutrients as a starting point. You might consider extra copper and zinc and vitamin B5 because they play a role in making hair pigment. And if those are low, you can start having premature graying of your hair. You might want to consider extra B12 because it can also cause, deficiencies can cause premature graying of your hair. But I would look to those things first because they're what we would call low-hanging fruit and relatively inexpensive and easy to supplement with. And then if you find it progressing, get tested, get some testing done. What do you do for plantar fasciitis? Valentina is asking. Very simple. Plantar fasciitis is inflammation of the fascia on the base of the foot. And if it's trauma-induced, in some people it is. Some people it's repetitive use injury. We see it a lot in chronic runners, especially if the runner's overweight and they're running longer distances. We get this a lot in people that training for marathons, like amateur runners that just trying to, life challenge, right? I'm going to train for this marathon and we're going to run 13 miles and then we're going to run 26 miles. And the wear and tear on the feet just can drive a fasciitis that's hard and doesn't want to go away. So some of it can be repetitive use, and you have to watch out for that because you got to rest it. When it's chronically there, you do have to rest it. You got to take time off of it. But there are things that you can also do to make sure that it's capable of healing. And one of the biggest factors involved with chronic inflammation of plantar fasciitis that I see clinically work really, really well is a high quality multivitamin, Ultra Nutrients, combined with high doses of quercetin and vitamin C. quercetin and vitamin C. Quercetin 4 grams. We have something called Ultra Q that I would use, and the vitamin C, Detox C, would use 5 grams of that. Together, they act as a very potent anti-inflammatory and can support the recovery. But you also have to keep the weight off of it. You've got to take time off. You might also consider following up with a great chiropractor or PT and consider some ultrasound therapy or laser therapy. These are anti-inflammatory therapies that can expedite the healing of plantar fasciitis, and they work really well. You might also consider red light, red infrared. It drives up and speeds up the ability for those cells in the foot to make energy to repair faster. So any of these things can all be helpful. But getting a good, firm reason as to why you developed it in the first place has to be the crux of your decision making. The doctors in the hospital don't want this woman to take vitamins at all. They're against it, and she won't be able to eat and be hungry again. What would you recommend for gallbladder? Look, if the doctors in the hospital don't want her to take vitamins, tell them to go to hell. Vitamins aren't illegal. They're not illegal in the hospital, and the doctors aren't in charge of whether or not a person takes vitamins. Honestly, I'm just going to say this very bluntly. Sometimes you have to be an asshole to assholes to get what's necessary, which in this case would be to get good nutrition, because the hospitals, look how horrifically, and this isn't like a damnation of all hospitals. They're great hospitals. I'm sure there are plenty of acute care cases where lives have been saved and are being saved on a daily basis. So kudos to those doctors and to those healthcare providers, nurses, et cetera, that provide that wonderful acute care. But when you're in the hospital and a doctor's telling you nutrition isn't important, and then the very food that they're offering you is shit, sorry, they don't have a leg to stand on in terms of giving advice or telling you yes or no. So you've got to grow courage enough to confront them. And you're the boss. They're not the boss. Remember that although doctors can feel like they're the boss, and in a hospital setting, it may seem like they're the boss, but remember what the relationship is. The relationship is not a dictatorial relationship where you're having to do what the doctor says. The relationship goes like this. I'm the doctor. I'm going to give you my opinion. I'm going to share with you, if you follow my opinion, what are the risks versus what are the benefits of following the advice I'm about to give you. And now you as the patient get to make a good decision based on many factors, based on your beliefs, based on your philosophy, based on your spirituality, based on the situation that you're in. It's your choice. It's not their choice. They can't tell you, no, you can't have your vitamins. No more than they can tell you, no, you can't bring inside food in. You can. As a matter of fact, how many times have you seen somebody in a hospital where somebody brings in McDonald's or Burger King, and doctors don't say anything about that? They don't kick those people out and say, quit malnourishing my patient with that shit food. What they say is, oh, you got a family member coming here to visit. That's great. So anyway, that was a rant. I didn't expect it to go that way, but you got to get tough with these guys and gals. You can't let them make judgment calls that are the wrong calls that you know are wrong calls. Now, you can accept treatment that you believe might be helpful and beneficial, but it doesn't mean that you also can't make additional decisions that would enhance that treatment. And that's really what you want to take away from that message. Love this. Christine says, I put my Hashimoto's into remission. Food makes a difference. So somebody was asking the question, can you? Yes, Christine just shared her experience. You can, and that's just been my experience as well. Barbara also says, I had Hashimoto's, been in remission for a few years. So there you go. Several people chiming in. I drink reverse osmosis water, and obviously they don't contain minerals. Does your ultra nutrients contain enough minerals to suffice? It contains some, but I'd probably go with more like ultra minerals or some other type of electrolyte formula in general. Marie's asking, how long did it take to recover from mold? In our case, I mean, we began recovering right away. I mean, for me, within a week, my brain thought more clearly. I'd say for my wife, 2 weeks, and you could tell she was definitely improving, but really 2 months for her to like be able to hold a regular conversation, because her mind was really, her word recall, her memory was really bad. I was finishing sentences for her. But it took every bit of 2 months. And look, beyond that, it took every bit of 2 years, just to be honest about it. We were in mold for a couple of years and got sicker and sicker and sicker the longer we were in it. The recovery aspect, like certain parts of recovery, tremendous difference within a couple of months, and inside of 6 months, a lot better, a tremendous amount of improvement. It doesn't take 2 years to feel better. It takes 2 years to fully recover for us. And what I mean by fully recover is the longest part of my recovery personally was my physical recovery. It wasn't my mental recovery. I felt like my brain and my nerve conduction, velocity, my speed of thought really enhanced after the first, very much so after the first couple of months, and was almost normal after 6. But relatively normal in comparison. But my physical body, the damage my physical body took 2 years. And here's why. I developed so much arthritis in that house. I was having just random aches and pains, but a lot of shoulder problems without injury, and just a lot of muscle achiness and fatigue in my muscles and joints. And so it was hard to get back into exercise, getting out of mold. And that was a much slower process than I wished it would have been. Because I was coming from a background of CrossFit. So, physically I'm in pretty good shape and try to stay in good shape, and trying to overdo it, but, trying to underdo it either. But it took every bit of 2 years to get my body back, because the mold just wrecked my testosterone. We had a mold in our house, a mold toxin called zearalenone, Zia, which for men is an estrogen mimicking compound. And for me, it was causing gynecomastia, it was causing hyperemotion ability, and it was wrecking my testosterone. So I lost a lot of muscle mass when we were in that house. And I gained about 25 pounds of visceral fat. So it's fat around my breast tissue. I'd never had, breasts outside of muscle. I'd never had breast fat tissue that until we got into the mold. And that took 2 years. It just took 2 years to rebuild my muscle, to rebuild my frame. So I would say a full 2 years to recover physically, but much quicker mentally, emotionally. I felt a lot better. And then just the general horrific symptoms of brain fog and dark thoughts, because you get in mold, most people get, including me, you get really depressive, dark kind of thoughts. That stuff typically goes away pretty quick. But the physical body, you have to repair and rebuild, and that's what took the time. Okay, I love it. Just bought 3 more of your books to give to family and friends, praying they will look, listen, and learn. Amen. Thanks for supporting your family with my work, Lita. That means a lot. Grounding sheets versus grounding pad under the sheets. Do we need direct contact with the pad? Ideally, yes. It depends on what your sheets are made out of. If they're plastic polyester stuff, I would say you want direct contact with the pad. If not, I'd say the pad under the sheet, if it's a natural fiber, would be okay. If you're looking for nighttime cramp relief, though, I'd really strongly consider urging you toward CalMag, calcium with magnesium, in higher doses. Beyond electrolytes and just straight minerals, I would probably go looking at higher calcium magnesium combination. I love this too. I buy your books and gave them away so many times. I'm still finishing the book after replacing it multiple times. Glad to know I can get a free copy so I can stop giving mine away. Thanks for supporting us. That's all I can say. I'm glad you value the work to such a degree that you would share it. That means a lot. What nutrients went out of mold for recovery? We have a mold protocol. Have you seen, Barbara, our mold detox recovery video? I would encourage you to check that out. I pull it, but I'd have to go hunt it down. My guy's not here today, so I apologize for that. Do you have a protocol for detoxing from microplastics that are in our foods and bodies these days? The same protocol to detoxify from anything else. Microplastics are not special in regards to getting rid of them. The best way to get rid of them is sweating through exercise outside of avoidance. So, replace any water bottles with glass or stainless. Look at the packaged food that you buy and reconsider. Don't eat anything up in plastics. Don't eat off of plastics. You're really just trying to avoid plastic altogether. Look for areas where you might get phthalates and other microplastic-like compounds or chemicals. This could be like cosmetics and soaps and shampoos and other products that you use. So, we have products one's called Ultra Liver Detox, which I would recommend. I'd recommend alpha lipoic acid. We have a product called Alpha Max. I'd recommend high dose vitamin C. I'd recommend CoQ10, and I'd recommend a lot of sweating. Like those would be, strategies in that regard to try to push that stuff out. I'm grain-free and still suffer from alopecia. I take Pygium, saw, palmetto, and nettle, and have chronic kidney disease. How do I get enough protein without animal protein causing too much protein? So I don't have the same opinion of a lot of the doctors and nephrologists that will say that kidney are damaged by protein. I don't believe the kidneys are damaged by protein at all. I believe that damaged kidneys leak protein, and that's not the same thing. So, in that regard, I'd look toward a lot of individual amino acids supplementation in free-form amino acids. We have a product called Ultra Amino. Now, I don't know what kind of alopecia you're referring to. If you're talking about autoimmune alopecia, or if you're just talking about generalized hair loss because of a lack of protein in the diet. But if you're talking about autoimmune alopecia, I would look to, are you missing something beyond no grain, no pain that might also be driving, an autoimmune hair loss? About dogs, are the kind of exams you often suggest, like intracellular nutrient analysis, available, or which other tests could be useful for an assessment on nutritional status? It's interesting you asked that question because I'm actually getting ready to meet with our lab expert on the potential for formulating a animal-based INA test. I think our pets need the same great nutrition that we have. But there's nothing, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing technologically available that's super accurate at this point for pets. But as soon as we know more, I'll make sure to make that announcement. How do you test for chemical exposures, infections, and microbiome imbalances? We do that in our clinic, Marie. So there's a number of different tests that we use to measure. We can measure for certain chemicals directly to see if the person's got high levels of them, high exposure of them. But we also measure certain like food dyes, reactives, enhancers, flavor additives, etc., to see whether the person's immune system is reacting to those things. And the microbiome, there's different types of tests that we run to assess microbiome, but that's not something we carry online at Gluten-Free Society. That's more of a clinic piece. The complication and the interpretation is a little bit more challenging for those kinds of tests than say, just looking at vitamin and mineral levels and making some good decisions to support your body. Yeah, agree. Chronic stress drives magnesium depletion in modern diets. Don't get enough magnesium back to us. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Is water weight gain inevitable with creatine supplementation, or is there a way to avoid it? You're not necessarily gaining water weight in the terms of like the bloatiness that a lot of people describe when they gain weight from excessive cortisol, water retention. The water that is gained through creatine use is generally driven into the muscle cells themselves, so your muscles become fuller. So it's not the same kind of water weight that many people would deem to be undesirable and causing that puffiness. Two years after tooth extraction, I have excessive bone loss at the extraction site. You're going to have excessive bone loss when you get a tooth extracted because the bone grows based on pressure. And when you remove a tooth, let's say it was on the top, you remove that top tooth, There's now no tooth there. The tooth below that would naturally, when you chew, compress and hit that other tooth, it creates a pressure that stimulates jawbone growth. And when you remove one tooth, that pressure in that area goes away. And so the bone growth in that area becomes less stimulated. So you could certainly massage that gap, but it's not going to do a tremendous amount of bone regrowth. You probably want to look at getting an implant in that area so that when the implant comes into contact with the natural tooth that's still there, you can create pressure back in the jaw that allows for the stimulus of bone growth. Now, supplementally, you could use like our bone box. We have a bone box that's full of bone supportive nutrients that might be helpful to support that. But at the end of the day, you want pressure on the bone to stimulate the growth. Just like with exercise, you need pressure on the bone and muscle to stimulate the growth. Let's see. Can I save my infrared belt out of my mold house? Oh, I don't know what it's made out of. Can you wash it? Is it then fabric that you're talking about as far as what the belt is made out of that you could wash in like an anti-mold, anti-mycotoxin detergent? Because if not, I wouldn't try saving it. I mean, if you're trying to save the light itself and throw the belt fabric part away and just replace the belt, I don't know what kind of belt you have, but they're different kinds. And if the lights are built into the belt, boy, and if that's a fabric material that's super thick, I'd be real cautious about wanting to bring it into, non-contaminated environment. How much does thyroid affect blood pressure or cause dizziness? Well, a lot, especially if you're overdosing. That's why it's so important that if you're on thyroid medicine, that you're, insisting to work with the doctor to measure periodically what your levels are. If your TSH drops below 0.5, it's an indicator that you might be being overdosed, and that can drive up your blood pressure, and it can cause dizziness. It can cause bone loss, and it can create catabolic wasting or catabolic breakdown of your tissues, muscle loss. So measuring is smart. And you should do that periodically. What kind of mold did you have? In my house, we had Stachy, Chitomium, Fusarium, Aspergillus, Penicillium. I have to look back at all my testing that we did. We did so much testing. We did air wall cavity testing, and we did tape lift and culture testing. And those were all the main species that we had. And then from a mycotoxin perspective, we had black mold mycotoxins. We had Fusarium mycotoxins, Aspergillus and Penicillium mycotoxins. So, the molds that we found in our home were the same mycotoxin subspecies that those molds produce. And it was bad. Our house, we had behind several wall cavities, it was, hundreds of thousands of spore counts per cubic meter of airspace on many of those tests, but high in pretty much every wall cavity of my house. My house was actually spontaneously sporating mold because the construction defects led to moisture accumulation in the wall cavity. And so the mold, just feasted on the back of the sheetrock, and it had enough moisture from the defective construction that it could spontaneously grow and release its toxins. And then we did air testing, and what we showed was that our house was actually, the walls were breathing the interior wall cavity air into the living space of our house. And so it was just basically spewing poison all over us day in and day out, night after night. It was bad. It was really bad. I don't wish that on anyone. And if you know my story at all, I was very close to retirement. Before we had mold, I was actually praying I didn't want to just keep seeing people with mold, because I've seen a lot of patients with, with mold problems, and it's tough to really tough conversation to have with somebody, because nobody wants to believe it could happen to them. And so the initial denialism in people is fantastically overwhelming. And I understand why. I didn't want to have it either myself, but that's a big hurdle. And then once you get past that hurdle with a patient, then you have to deal with that hurdle with their husband or wife, with their other family members, with other people in their life who are trying to convince them there's mold everywhere and that it can't possibly be mold. And there are other doctors who are ignorant on any kind of mold education. And so overcoming that hurdle is tough as a doctor, because if you're a good doctor, I think I'm a good doctor, but that's my own opinion. But I take my work home with me. I take my patients home with me every night. I think about them. I pray about them, until they get better. They're on my mind. And so when you've got people living in mold, not admitting it, or not wanting to come to the realization of it, and you're carrying that weight in your own heart and your own mind, it's hard, because it's heavy. And so that's why I was praying. I was praying to God, please, Lord, just quit sending chronic mold cases my way. Maybe I should retire. And I was thinking about retirement, just for the fact that it was tough. It was tough on me. And anyway, that was shortly after that. The Lord put mold in my house, and I think He did that for a reason. I think He did it because He needed me to understand it better, and He needed me to empathize better. And so it struck any and every fathom in my mind about retirement. I am now committed, and committed even more at this point to understanding it, and to being able to help people understand it, despite sometimes them being in their own way. So anyway, that's mold. It's just a tough thing to help deal with, and people don't want to admit that they have it when they do. Based on your book, so much I've learned. My family actually calls me for supplemental advice. Love it. Love it that they're reaching out to you now. It's the ripple effect, right? It's the save 100 million lives mantra that we have, right? When I touch your life and you learn and get better and become a beacon of hope and health, then you touch others' lives. And even those people that I'll never meet or ever come into contact with are being affected by the work I did, out of a genuine intention to just truly help people and help change the world. And I just think that's such an amazing thing. I never get tired of hearing you guys say, how my work affected you and then subsequently affected other people. To me, it's what fuels me. It's what keeps me going. So never stop sending that information my way. It's greatly appreciated, because some days are harder than others. I'm sure that's true of all of your lives, as it is in mine. But ultimately, we love hearing positive impact and stories that people have. On that note, I'm going to ask everyone a favor today, since we're talking about it. I'm kind of going over here, but I am going to put a link up, and any of you who would be so kind as to reciprocate how my work has helped you in any way, or helped your family. What I would love to see is that if you would share that information by going over to our site and just leaving that information, just leaving a little review. You say something small, say something large, but I'm gonna put that up. So after today's show, for those of you who have a story to share, sharing is how other people come to learn and find out about us and trust that what we're doing is helpful because of your experiences as well. People may judge what they're going to do based on other people's stories and experience. So I'm going to put a link up in the feed right now. And for after the show, any of you who are willing, that would be greatly appreciated. Just love to get your feedback in that regard. I just dropped that link into the chat. Can you do Zoom calls with HSA and buy your supplements with it? Generally, a lot of people do. Yeah. We don't deal with any kind of insurance or write insurance letters, Tanya, but a lot of our patients use their HSAs. We do write letters saying, to we write letters about nutrient needs to HSAs, but we don't do like pre-auth or insurance coverage or any of that. We don't let middlemen get in the way of what we do. What do you suggest for varicosities, varicose veins? Bioflavonoids, quercetin, vitamin C. We have a product called Ultra C. It has bioflavonoids and vitamin C. That would be a good place to start for supporting vascular health. Could you actually see the mold, or was it invisible? Both. We could see it and it was invisible. That's the tricky part of finding it sometimes. It's for us, it was the majority was behind the wall cavity. So it wasn't visible. And even pulling back the wall cavity, a lot of what was there was still invisible. It was visible under the right lighting. So if you shine a high powered LED flashlight at the right angle, you can see microbial growth. But with the naked eye, it's a little bit harder to see. And in some areas of the house, we had very visible mold. So it just depends on where it was. Because we had multiple problems. In our house, we had multiple problems. Like, God gave me every problem. He said, I want you to understand why mold grows in a house in every possible way imaginable. And so he gave us so many construction defects, that going through this has made me more of an expert than I ever cared to be around understanding how construction defects can lead to water intrusion, even if it's not running water vapor intrusion that can cause spontaneous sporation. Because I was forced to have to learn it. I mean, I was forced to have to pay engineers and architects and experts to come in and do deconstructive testing of the house, because we had to build a case. We're still in litigation currently now. I mentioned a few days ago, I was in deposition for 10 hours last week. All they tried to do is discredit me. They didn't have any evidence against the evidence that I had on my house. So they tried to make me come across as a bad person. Because that's the only case the other attorneys have. But at any rate, I had a lot of mold. I had a lot of reasons why the mold was growing. And so for many of you, that question was it visible? And a lot of times it's not visible. That's what makes it hard to find. Because if you obviously have mold growing on your wall, like that's red flag, get that checked out right away. But if it's inside of your air ducts, or if it's inside of your HVAC system, or it's growing behind a wall or around the window, under the wall, or if it's growing behind a shower or a bathtub, and you don't always see it, it's not always visibly obvious. And sometimes that requires some diligence and the right kind of mold inspector and the right kind of testing. Because the industry itself is about like the medical industry. You go to a medical doctor to try to figure out what's wrong with you, and you don't, because the system's not designed to figure out what's wrong with you. They're designed to tell you what to call what's wrong with you, right? And there's a big difference between what's wrong with you and what do we call it. So, for example, if you've got rheumatoid arthritis, it's just a diagnosis that it fits the criteria for the symptoms you have. But when a doctor diagnoses you with rheumatoid arthritis, he's not telling you why you have rheumatoid arthritis. He's just telling you that you have it, and that the solution will be these medicines for the rest of your life, or you'll be in a wheelchair. I mean, that's the system. And in the mold industry, it's the same thing. They're not looking for mold in a real or serious way. They're running air tests and charging you $500 for mold inspection, and then telling you don't have it, because air tests do not make a mold inspection. Air tests are a part of one of many tools that a mold inspector can use. But if you're relying on air tests to assume you do or don't have mold as the sole means of the investigation, it's like relying on the general blood work that your doctor runs when you go in and feel horrible, and then they tell you your blood work's fine. Go on, you're not sick, you're crazy. Here's the number to the shrink down the road. The mold inspectors do the same thing to people, and they did it to us. They did it to us multiple times. They tried to gaslight my family into believing that we didn't have it, and they gave us a mold clearance report. It was, highly unethical, and it would have ended up probably killing my family had we believed them. So this is the. I hate to talk so much about mold, but it seems like the questions are going a lot in that direction. But mold, I believe truly that there are a lot more cases of mold-related illness than what science currently supports, and I think this is going to pan out over the next 20 years to be a major problem for many people. Does the mold that comes out in restrooms, is that mold toxic? Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, it depends. You can have it swabbed to see what kind it is, but generally, if it's a water mold, it's generally going to be one of the kinds that generates mycotoxins. If you're seeing it repetitively show up in your grout, Carolina, you need to make sure you have fans in your bathroom and you have dehumidification in your bathroom. Because what happens, you take that hot shower, that hot bath, that water vapor stays in the air, and it becomes a source of fuel for mold. So mold can then begin basically growing. Like in our bathroom personally, we have dehumidification, but we also have a squeegee where we squeegee down the walls after a shower to get the bulk of that water down into the drain so that we can get that room dried out relatively quickly. That's one of the mold prevention techniques that we use at home. But diligence around water is one of the best things you can do to reduce the potential for mold growth. And if you grout over grout, the mold's not going anywhere. You're just grouting over existing mold and then continue to fuel it with the water that it needs to continue to live. So. Now let's see here. Any idea when you'll be shipping to Australia? Man, we keep getting the question. We just moved into our new office. So part of what we were waiting for was to expand our shipping services, which has changed a little bit in the last year and a half because of politics. We're working through it, but we just got into our new facility. We're working to increase our capacity and to be able to serve internationally. I don't want to promise a timeline, Maddie, but I can promise you that we have every intention of making these things available internationally as soon as we can possibly figure out what the right solution is without bankrupting people. Because right now, some of the problems we're running into is just the sheer customs and tariffs and things that are going on that are happening. And sometimes the customs just keeps your box and steals your supplements internationally. So we're trying to work through some of those logistics so that we don't create a massive problem for all of you who want to come in order. I mean, we want to make it work for you. I live in the PNW. I see houses being built all the time in the rain, and I just know it's going to end up being a problem. Yeah, you can't throw a house up in the rain and then dry it in with wet wood. That moisture is gonna get stuck behind the wall, and it's in the sheetrock is backed by paper. You're just gonna fuel mold growth. We haven't launched it yet, but in one of the interviews, because I've done probably 60 hours worth of interviews with experts of all different kinds. But that's coming in the mold documentary. I know right now we're slated. It's probably not going to happen. We're trying to have it done by December, but it's probably not going to be done by December, to be honest. There's just too many things that I've got, too many irons and different fires that I've got to have enough time to fully complete that project the way it needs to be completed with integrity. And so but it's coming. And in one of the interviews, I'll just share with you, like when you're building your house, you can order wood at a certain rate of humidity. Um, and you can also make assurances that as that wood is stored on the property where it's going to be used for the construction of your home, that it's covered and properly taken care of. And in the event of rain, you need to have contractual assurances that your builder is not going to dry in a wet frame. I know we were building our new office. Part of the construction component of it was just me having to be a total asshole to my contractor. And it wasn't that I was trying to be a rude or a mean person, but when you're spending a lot of money on a building for sick people who are sick with mold, you can't afford to build a building that then ends up with mold. And not only that, you would expect a level of expertise from experts claiming to build buildings, right? And so, but there were several times where we had to stop construction and we had to make sure that certain levels of professionalism were met and certain areas of construction were changed to match the integrity of the building so that we didn't end up with mold 5 years from now or 3 years from now. So it was something that we had to take great pains to do. I had to act mean. I had to be mean. I had to shut off construction. I had to say things I wouldn't typically say to people because they don't get it. And it's hard when you're talking about mold. Most people they don't understand it. They think mold is everywhere and it's not a big deal. And this is the way we've always built houses, and houses aren't problematic that we've built. And what they don't realize is that they are problematic. And many of the people in the houses that they built historically are sick, and they just don't know that they're in mold. And so it's not necessarily that it hasn't been a problem. It's just that your ignorance of the issue has led you to believe that the way you're constructing these buildings is an accurate way to do it. And so you have to be mean because you're up against a mantra. It's just like, look, it's no different than medicine. It's like sometimes you have to set your boundaries with family and friends over your diet, not because you want to be mean or not because you want to come across as a bear, but because if they don't get it and they keep doing it and you don't draw that boundary, they're jeopardizing you. And that's what it boils down to. So you have to become bullish to protect yourself and your team and your family. I think it's Jordan Peterson. I like that guy. I know a lot of people don't like him, but I like his integrity and his honesty. And one of the things he says is you have to be willing to be dangerous and to be violent. Not that I want to go start a war or start a fight, but you've got to be willing to show your teeth when it's necessary. For the sake of integrity. My practitioner says MS and Parkinson's, etc., can be caused by mold. Yeah, your practitioner is accurate in that. What foods would you take on a long international travel? I take well on the going trip. I take fresh fruit. This is one product I like. I actually keep this on hand. This is a air dried, grass-fed, grass-finished jerky, and it's got about 140 grams of protein in one bag, and so that's good. That's a good amount, and I'll take several bags of that on an international trip. I'll take I have other kinds of jerky that I take. I'll take nuts as well. And sometimes I even pack like hard-boiled eggs for the trip. So I might hard-boil, half a dozen or more hard-boiled eggs so that I have food during the flight and on the way over before we get set up. So those are easy things. Those are whole food, real options that you can use. But nuts don't go bad. So it's a high-calorie food that you can pack and travel with you that will get you through a time where you might not have access to great food. What would you recommend for building a new house to eliminate having mold? Oh, hire an outside expert firm to monitor your build would be the best advice. Like, it's what I did here in this building, and it saved us a number of times because I'm as much as I do know now that I didn't know before, I'm still not by any stretch a construction expert. I mean, I know a lot of things about it that I did never wish I had to know, but I'm still not the master expert. So I hire experts. So if you're building a home, it's think about, like, this is the way I think about it. A home is probably going to be one of the greatest investments that you ever have, right? And so for many people, it's the number one largest amount of dollars they will ever spend in their life on a single item purchase. And so it's worth it to me, even if it means building a little less of a home, to hire people to protect you from the negligence that is rampant in home building. Because it's not. I don't think it's purposeful negligence. I think it's just pure lack of training and lack of understanding when it boils down to it. And you guys aren't going to become experts in it. There's too much to know. I'm not an expert in it. And I had to go through it to become more knowledgeable about it so that I could speak more intelligently about it, but by no stretch am I an expert. Now, I did buy a book. I bought a few books on the topic and read them. I bought some architectural books, really good one by Laporte and Banta on building homes. There's another one called Mold Construction 2.0. That's a really good, smaller book, written in easier to understand, words for people that don't understand the technicalities of architectural language. But ultimately, I ended up hiring a firm to monitor the build and to help point out flaws and errors and stop them before they moved on to next phase of construction. And I think that's ultimately what you have to consider doing, because the cost of not doing it might cost you your home and your health and your life and so much more. Let's see here. Fruits loaded with fructose. Should we be consuming much fructose or only during typical growing season to fatten for winter, as would be the norm? I mean, eat seasonally. I think that's a brilliant plan, not because I said it's brilliant, but because it's the way God designed it, right? So eating fruit in the season is okay. I think people can overdo it. And I think in certain situations, some people don't tolerate any fructose. I mean, we see this a lot in gluten sensitivity, where the digestive enzyme and digestive capacity is decimated. And so a person may not be able to have that for a time, at least, as their gut's trying to heal. But as a general rule of thumb, fruit is healthy. Fruit is okay. It's not a bad thing. You can overdo it, and then there are certain situations where people have lost their capacity to break it down. Certain people with fatty liver or metabolic syndrome don't do well with it because it's just driving a problem that was created by processed foods and other inflammatory issues. But yeah, I think it's a good strategy. So nuts do go bad if they're not refrigerated, but if they're in shells, they don't, right? And so one of the ways I like to eat nuts is in the shell, and for two reasons. Number one, they don't turn rancid in the shell, at least not anywhere as quickly as if you crack them. Once you crack them, they start oxidizing and rancidifying. But the other is it's controlled. Some shells are harder to break and require a little finger work. And so by default, it kind of prevents you from overconsumption or overeating. And so I'm a fan of that strategy, especially those of you who maybe have sometimes have trouble saying no. I know I do. I grew up in a foodie family where food was like the teat of pleasure, and all things were solved with food and sweets. And that's just the way we grew up. No anger toward it. It just is what it was. And I don't want to, with that in my background, being a foodie, I don't want to put any temptation in front of myself that I can't fight. And so having to crack those things makes you think twice about eating too many of them. Cannabis and caffeine, do you recommend either? I mean, you could use, I don't recommend really cannabis. I mean, if you're talking about like marijuana, I don't recommend it. I mean, the way people do it, how do I want to put this? I think the people and the powers that be that are legalizing marijuana all over the United States have a nefarious plan. They really, I mean, they call it dope for a reason. It doesn't do well to your brain cells. And that, now, are there shamanic, ritualistic aspects to using cannabis? Sure, but we're not talking about smoking it every day. We're not talking about people getting high all the time and just decimating their brain and becoming addicted and destroying their pleasure centers in their brain and driving illness. And so I'm very much against any kind of regular use of that stuff for many reasons. I also think it's an introductory drug. I think it's an introductory drug to a lot of other things. And the number of patients I've seen that were just struggling because of it, I mean, it's not a small amount, and it can be tough to get off. That being said, so I'm not a fan of it in that way. Are there medicinal potential purposes for it? I've had some people that benefit from it in medicinal ways, and I don't think we throw it out completely in that regard. But I think for what most people are using it recreationally for, I think it's terrible. As far as caffeine is concerned, I think caffeine has some benefits. I think tea and coffee are not necessarily taboo. But you also have to take the context of quantity, right? Because caffeine at quantity can be problematic. And if you're already in a state of stressed out, hypersympathetic nervous system tone, then overdoing the caffeine is just going to keep you in that state. It's not necessarily caffeine is going to cause that problem for you, but it's going to perpetuate that problem for many people. This is why so many people lose tolerability to it. But the addiction drives their continued use. And so it depends. It's all about quantity and context of the individual. What's your opinion on CBD oils? Minimal help. I mean, most of the CBD oils for like rub-on for pain, they're not doing anything for pain. You notice one of the main ingredients in most of those oils isn't even CBD, it's capsaicin, which is the powder or the plant base that makes your skin feel hot and cold. And so what it does is it's disrupting nerve reception. It blocks pain by disrupting how your nerves perceive pain. The cannabis itself, if you were just to use the CBD oils, their pain mitigating effects are relatively minimal. It can work in some neurological conditions, fairly decent, but it wouldn't be the thing I'd pull out first to use. That's why we don't carry it. We don't carry a cannabinoid product because clinically they don't weigh up to the hype. Notice that all that hype that was going on 5 years ago is kind of gone. Why? Because the shit doesn't work. So sorry, I mean to cuss at you guys, but it doesn't work as well as the hype. And so when you have something that's hyped to that degree and then it fails to meet the expectation, then generally people quit buying it, and that's what you're seeing with a lot of those products. All righty. It's wow, we're 2 hours in. I'm gonna go eat lunch. I knew I was hungry. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate all of you. If you're new to the show, if this was a new show and you're new to this world, welcome. I would encourage you to hit like and subscribe below, hit the bell, and if you'd like the information. But I'd also encourage you to check out our crash courses. We'll put those up right here. Those are thousands of hours of information on most topics you could ask about around health and nutrition. We have the most vast library anywhere in the world on meaningful deep dives. You won't find anything like it anywhere else. I know that for a fact. You'll find other great doctors on YouTube. You'll find other great information, but you'll not find anything as in-depth in the breadth of knowledge and the complexity made simple as we have in our crash course library. So I strongly encourage all of you to check that out if you haven't. And it's free. It's a service to humanity, if you want to call it. I've spent my life creating that for humanity to benefit from it. So check it out, share it, enjoy it. Come visit us at Gluten-Free Society this week. Many of our products around stress are on sale. And so you can, I think that coupon code auto-populates. I don't know what it is, but you can go and if you watched our stress show and you're looking to purchase glycine or theanine or ultra-calm or ultra-adrenal or adrenocalm or any of those other stress-supporting supplements, those are on sale this week, and you can tap into those. And make sure while you're there, you sign up. If you're not, sign up for our newsletter, where we'll send you a bunch of free information on how to navigate autoimmunity and chronic inflammation using diet and lifestyle, how you can improve your life and your health. Thanks so much for your patronage and your viewership. I appreciate you all. And thank you all today for all of those kind words that you were sending in. I didn't read all the comments, but really do appreciate them, and I will go back and read them. So thank you so much for filling my cup. I hope I filled yours. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll see you Tuesday.